Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 175 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I'm doing really well.
Good.
Just got back from an appointment for my daughter today.
Yeah.
All the tests came back well. We walked out of there on cloud nine.
Good.
So just to kind of give a quick update, my daughter's doing really well. Everything looks good.
Did you grab one of those suckers?
I did not.
What?
I did not. Although I did get my temperature taken.
Oh. I hope they did it old school style.
Thankfully, it was just the wand over.
Oh,
it wasn't old school style.
Yeah.
But they are very careful. I mean, and as they should be. But they make you use the hand sanitizer. They wand you. At Children's, they take your picture.
Really?
And they generate a little badge, like a little sticky badge.
Yeah.
That has your picture on it. Yeah,
Proves that you are who you are when you're walking around?
They take not only the COVID security very serious, they just take security in general very seriously.
Do you pull your mask down for the picture, or do you leave your mask up?
You do have to pull it down.
Yeah.
It obviously has been a tough couple of weeks, but we're getting back to normal.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy.
Look at this new shirt I got on, man.
Yeah. You bought one of the new True Crime All the Time shirts from our new shop. I don't know how many people, we did mention, I don't know how many people know about it, but if you go out to our website, truecrimeallthetime.com, click on the merchandise link,
right?
You'll see two links on that page. One is to our first shop, and then the second's to our second shop, which has some different types of merchandise that the feedback on has been really great.
Yeah.
The people that have ordered.
I like the one I got on.
It's a sharp shirt, and it's much different than what we've normally had. This is more of a script.
Right.
True crime all the time. There's a script. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
And I paid the extra few bucks to get the nicer quality t-shirt.
Well, that's the other thing about this store. They offer some t-shirts that are a little bit more high quality.
Yeah.
A little softer, different cuts, V-neck. Some of them are especially tailored towards women, so definitely check it out. All right, Gibbs, we have some new support, so let's give some shout-outs. On Patreon, we had Bonita Jackson.
Hey, Bonita.
Juan Gonzalez.
What's going on, Gonzalez?
Priscilla Parker.
Hey, PP.
Lisa Bodycott. I don't know why that just kind of cracked me up.
What's going on, Bodycott?
Krista Davidson.
Hey, Krista.
Ginger Moody.
What's happening, Ginger?
Stacy Martins.
Well, thank you, Stacy.
Kara Peterson.
Hey, Kara.
Leona Quafey.
What's up, Quafey?
Catherine Hindmarsh.
Hey, Catherine.
Patty Volker.
What's going on, Patty?
Amanda Farley.
Hey, Amanda.
Derek Huff.
Hey, thanks, Derek.
Stacy Louise.
What's going on, Louise?
Amanda Hester.
Hey, Amanda.
Travis Fogelman.
Hey, the Fogelman's in the house.
Sure. Scott Carter.
Hey, Scott.
Angie Helmick Walter.
Well, thank you, Angie.
Sarah Hansen.
Hey, Sarah.
Kathleen Rapace.
Well, I won't pass, but thank you, Rapace.
Rhonda Newton.
Hey, Rhonda.
And last but not least, Dana Buster.
Well, bust a rhyme, Buster.
So thank you for all that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Yeah.
This week we selected Adrian Phillips.
Hey, Adrian.
Been with us a long time. We appreciate all the Patreon, both new and the continued support. Some great donations on PayPal as well. Jennifer Warmuth.
Hey, Jennifer.
Michelle Robinson.
What's going on, Michelle?
Liam Stevens.
Hey, Liam.
And Jenny Nicholas.
Well, thank you, Jenny.
Gibbs, right now we have an episode out on TCAT on Susan Polk. And this was kind of a little bit of a different episode. Some strange twists and turns to this one.
Yeah.
It is a woman who killed her husband and then later claimed self-defense, but the circumstances around it and the trials and just some really bizarre behavior on the part of Susan Polk, I think really make this case very interesting.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing that case.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I did. It's, like you said, a lot of twist in it.
Maybe some turns too.
Definitely some turns. Hey, and we're out in San Francisco, so.
That's true. That's true. Out in San Fran. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We're talking about the disappearance of Carey Mae Parker. So we're down in the area of Hunt County, Texas. and Carey disappeared in 1991. Hunt County, Texas currently has 7 unsolved missing person cases that range from 1986 to 2017. Now, obviously, each and every one of these are extremely important cases.
For sure.
But we want to dive into the disappearance of Carey Mae Parker. It has some interesting controversies that surround it. Carey Mae Parker was born on May 5th, 1967. And in 1991, she was 23 years old, living in Quinlan, Texas with some friends.
And back in the 90s, Quinlan definitely had some pockets of poverty. It was kind of rough for a lot of people.
Carey was a single mother of 3 children. She had a son, Brian, and she had 2 girls, Mandy and Brandy. All 3 of the kids were under the age of 6. Carey worked the night shift at a company called Flanders Precision Air. This was an air conditioning company about 20 miles away in the town of Terrell. Because she worked the night shift and some pretty long hours, one of her kids lived with their birth father, while the other 2 children lived with Carey's father, which allowed them to maintain somewhat of a more regular schedule.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be working the night shift and long hours, it's going to be hard for you to even watch your young kids, right?
No doubt. But of course, anytime she wasn't working or sleeping, she tried to spend time with her kids. I mean, that's what moms do.
Yeah.
That's why we love moms.
We do.
Carey worked hard, but she played hard as well. And she did have a history of drugs. And some people said that she was somewhat promiscuous. Before Carey went missing, she had a boyfriend named Cody who had somewhat of a questionable past. Cody had done a stint in jail in 1990. And it seemed to me, Gibbs, as though when they were together, they had what some people would call kind of a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, they really did. They argued a lot. And to that point, I remember reading an article where one of the last times that she was with him in his car, as they were going down the road, they got in such a big argument that she wanted out of the car. She kicked the front windshield out.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
I've heard of people opening the door. I've even heard of people flinging themselves out of the car while it's still moving.
Right.
I don't think I've ever heard of anyone kicking the front windshield out.
Well, now you have.
But at the time that Carey went missing, she and Cody had broken up because Cody found out that she was sleeping with a local police officer while he was locked up. And I think it's always tough, Gibbs, when you're talking about a victim who had some things in their life that they probably weren't that proud of. I mean,
right.
It's no secret Carey was not perfect. Friends and family came out to the media and said as much. Her siblings said she ran with a pretty rough crowd, but deep down, she was a very good person.
Sure she was.
There were some reports that Cody had allegedly threatened her and that Carey was concerned for her safety.
Well, I think he really took it hard that why he was locked up, thinking she was waiting for him, that she was, seeing somebody else. And on top of that, she was seeing a police officer, which didn't set good with him.
Because he was locked up?
Mm-hmm.
On March 17th, 1991, Carey had gone to her father's house. He also lived in Quinlan to do some laundry and get her mail. And part of what was in the mail was a paycheck for her from the previous week. While she was at her father's house, she planned some things to do for her son Brian's upcoming birthday. It was coming in just a few days. When she left her father's home to head off to work, she pulled away in her early 1980s bluish gray Buick Skylark, which had Texas license plates. This was the last time her car, and more importantly, Carey, was ever seen by her father. Now, authorities say that she did make it to her shift at work that night, but after she left work, she was never seen again.
Right.
Carey's father and friends received calls that Carey didn't show up to work the following night. And her friends that she had been staying with, they said they hadn't seen her. The family knew something was wrong when she didn't show up to celebrate her son's birthday. Carey's father called a good friend who happened to be a local police officer and asked this person to look into Carey's disappearance. This friend told Carey's father that they would file a report when they got to the office. Now, months later, Carey's sister, Patricia, called the Terrell Police Department. This was where the father's friend said that he would file the missing persons report. Terrell was the last town that Carey was known to have been seen in.
Yeah, that's where she worked.
I think the family assumed that the police were busy working her file, right? Chasing leads, doing interviews. But the family was shocked to learn from the Terrell Police Department that they didn't have any information regarding Carey at all. In fact, no police report, no missing persons report had ever been filed. And as you can imagine, Gibbs, the family was very upset to find out that no one had filed a report. No one had opened a case. Months had gone by. Nobody had heard from Carey, and not a single person in law enforcement even knew she was gone. So Patricia decided that she had to go right away to file a missing persons report that day. She told an officer that Carey was last seen at their father's home on March 17th, late in the evening. Then she drove off in her Buick Skylark to go to work. She told the officer that Carey was 23 years old, 5'10", about 120 pounds. She had brown hair, blue eyes, and wore glasses most of the time. Patricia told officers that Carey had some scars on her left arm that she got from a fall through a window, and that years earlier she had broken her pelvis and tailbone. So the officer that took this information from Patricia wanted to conduct a welfare check on Carey before making this an official missing persons case. They proved that Carey was last seen at work after leaving her father's house and that no one had seen her since that night. So Gibbs, naturally, you would think that based on all of that information, the officer should have filed the missing person report right then and there.
Absolutely, he should have.
But as the family found out later, the officer in charge failed to file the report. And again, Carey's family assumed that police were working the case because initially investigators had come around. They asked some questions. The problem is the family didn't realize it was tied to the welfare check. Okay, they did the welfare check.
Right.
They failed to file the missing persons report, but because investigators had asked some questions, the family assumed, and rightfully so, because I think I would have as well,
right.
They're starting.
Yeah, this is moving forward.
They're looking, but they're not because the missing persons report was never filed. So because of that, what do you have? Or
what don't you have?
What don't you have? You're not going to have search parties. You're not going to have K9 units brought in, helicopters. There's not going to be this coordinated campaign to distribute flyers all over the place. There were no investigations into her ex-husband or her previous boyfriends or the people she worked with and the friends that she partied with. There was no APB put out for Carey's car, and there was no description. Gibbs, basically there was nothing that went out that said, either be on the lookout, or there was no officer that would have received any information that he or she should have been looking for Carey Parker.
Right.
And on top of that, nobody was looking for Carey Parker.
No, because everything that kicks off from this missing person report is all those type of things, right?
And we mentioned the fact that there's no investigation into certain people. A lot of times in an unsolved case, that's a big deal.
Sure it is.
Because you want the investigation to happen quickly while memories are fresh.
Right.
And if you're going to wait some extended period of time before you start to talk to people, I think it does some things. First of all, memories fade. That's a fact.
Right.
The second thing is, if you have somebody that has something to hide, that gives them more time to kind of formulate or, build an alibi or put things in motion that kind of cover their tracks. That's not good. That's not what you want in an investigation.
It's like you said, working the opposite for you. The people that you need the details from start to lose those details, and the people you don't want to have concrete details build those details.
Exactly. So none of this happened just based on the fact that the missing person report was never filed. Carey's sister even called the FBI in 1996 to ask if they knew anything about Carey's disappearance. They did review what info they could find and said that they couldn't find any evidence of foul play. And therefore, it really wasn't, any type of case that they could make active. So months turn into a year. 1 year turns into 2. The next thing you know, we're talking about multiple years have gone by, and still nobody is looking for Carey Parker. And I guess we should be much more specific when we say years. It's not until 2010 when Carey's family and Carey's children, who are adults by this point, want to know what the police are up to. Now, we've already said no police report was filed, but the family didn't know that. It was 2010 when they found out that the Terrell police never filed a missing persons report on Carey Parker. So now the family knows no one has been working on her case for the last, 19 years?
Yeah. Not one investigator. She's not in any databases. None of that.
So I think at this point, you've got everyone in a tizzy. You have the family blaming the Terrell Police Department, saying, hey, why didn't you file this as a missing persons report? The Terrell Police Department looked into it. They came out and claimed that the family, including Patricia, didn't ask them to file a missing person report. They simply wanted assistance with locating Carey's whereabouts. The Terrell police also stated that it wouldn't have been the town where she was last seen that would have filed the missing person report. That would have fallen to the jurisdiction where the missing person lived. So in Carey's case, that would have been Quinlan.
Exactly.
Or at least that's what Terrell was saying.
Sure. Yeah.
Terrell police went back through their notes of the welfare check that they did and said that there was nothing that indicated to them foul play was involved or that anything bad actually happened to Carey. Now, I don't know about you, Gibbs, but if someone calls the police and says they have not seen their sister, their family member, their daughter, whoever it is, in months, and they need help to find her, my assumption would be that that would be a missing person. That would be the start of a missing persons case.
Yeah. And you would try to assist them if they're barking up the wrong tree, if they're not where they need to be. I would think you would point them to where they need to be. Like, hey, we're doing what we can here, but you really need to go down to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Point them back to Quinlan, where Carey lived, and say, we'd love to help you, but protocol is that you reach out to the jurisdiction where the person lives, file the report there,
right,
and then things will take off from that point. To not even do that, that seems very, very strange. I think a lot of people will look at it as though they were trying to cover their rear ends.
I think so.
At that point, because 19 years goes by and two different people say that they came to you and asked you to file a missing persons report and you never did.
And yet you never told them where to go do that at?
I think at that point you're going into CYA mode.
Right. And I know they said there was no foul play, but this is a mom of 3 kids. It's unlikely she's going to flee the state
days before her son's birthday.
Yeah.
Well, I get it. There's no signs of foul play. Okay. That doesn't mean that someone's still not missing and that you need to investigate that disappearance. If I come home and my wife is gone, I can't get her on her cell phone. The police come out. There's no signs of foul play. The door's not busted in. There's not blood in the house. It doesn't mean my wife's still not missing and we need to find her. So again, I have some issues. I think everybody's going to have some issues with how a lot of things in this case were handled. And I talked about, the fact that her son's birthday was in just a few days. That was a big thing. Her family said, no way would Carey just have up and left, missed her son's birthday, let alone leaving all 3 of her kids.
So you made a good point that people will have questions about how the police handled the situation. And I think they're going to have similar questions about how the family handled the 19 years leading up to this.
I don't know how anyone listening hasn't already thought, okay, I get it. The police didn't do some things they were supposed to. But you're telling me 19 years went by and the family only checked up on it 2 or 3 times?
Yeah.
People are going to have huge issues with that.
I mean, I get it. The kids were little, growing up during this time, so people were trying to take care of them. But at what point do you just forget about and assume in your back of your mind that, sure, the authorities are taking care of it. I haven't heard from them. That's just because they haven't found anything yet.
Yeah, I get that. And I don't want to blame the family.
Right.
But I can tell you right now, there are a lot of people online that do.
Sure.
And maybe blame's not the right word. They just question how this could have happened. You're not seeing anything on the news. Not one single report.
No.
Of a newscast that says, hey, we're looking for this missing woman. You're not seeing any flyers around town. You're not seeing hundreds of volunteers coming out to search because you're not part of it. And the police haven't said, hey, we're having a big search party.
Yeah.
Come join us. Lead it.
Not getting any of that.
No. So, it's, again, a lot of people look at this case, and I think rightfully so, they have questions about how the family could have gone as long as they did without becoming more suspicious much, much earlier on.
A few members of the family came out and said they believe that Carey was already dead.
All right. So let's dissect that for a minute. You come out and say, that I believed that Carey was most likely dead. All right. After a number of years, maybe some people have that thought, but what I still don't get is, even if you have that thought, do you then just not think about it at all? Or I think most people would say, okay, if that's the case, I'm following up on a murder investigation, or I'm still following up on something.
Yeah.
Because if she is deceased, I want to know. And if she was murdered, then I want to know who did it. And I want to make sure that that person or those people are held responsible.
Some follow-up should be happening with the family. They should be reaching out, wanting this follow-up.
Yeah.
Asking these questions.
I mean, again, I think that's what the majority of people who listen to this or research this, that's what they're going to say. No matter how you spin it, it's tough to see a scenario where 19 years goes by and only a handful of checks are done.
Right.
And you're assuming for what? 5, 10, 15 years at a stretch that the police are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're just not updating you. Most people are bugging the shit out of the police.
Sure.
Wanting to know what's going on.
What's happening with my
Yes.
Sister's case, please.
So again, I'm not trying to badmouth this family. What I am saying is there are a lot of people online, and I do believe there will be a lot of people listening that have questions. And I think the questions are legitimate. In 2010, Patricia filed a missing persons report with the Hunt County Sheriff's Office. The Hunt County Sheriff investigated Carey's disappearance by looking into the DMV database and other online sites that could contain information about Carey or maybe a Jane Doe with similarities to Carey, but they come up empty. They checked her old bank records, but nothing stood out. There hadn't been any activity since 1991. Investigators began to look into Carey's ex-husband, her former boyfriends, but they really didn't find anything abnormal there either. Investigators have traveled across Texas and even into neighboring Oklahoma to find some of Carey's old friends to interview. But Gibbs, nothing came from those meetings either. But at least they're trying.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is, and it goes back to what I said earlier, they're trying to work a case that is now 19 plus years old. It's hard enough to work a brand new case.
Exactly.
You know, cold case investigators, they go back and work old cases, but they have most of the time the benefit of work that was done early on.
They got some file they can open up
Sure.
and read those notes of what occurred that time.
This is like working a 19-year-old cold case with no notes whatsoever. You're just working it from scratch.
Got to be tough.
Now, some members of Carey's family have come out and said that they feel that police just aren't working the case that hard, and have said that because she's been missing for such a long time, you know, maybe they're not putting the same effort into it that they would other cases.
I think that's a difficult thing to say.
I think it's very hard because investigators have said what we just said. Hey, this is a difficult case because of its age, because it hasn't been worked. I mean, if you think about it, many of the people around back in 1991 that knew Carey, then they had either moved, some of them had died. Police had no physical evidence. They had no idea where Carey might have been taken from, if she was taken. There have been some persons of interest over the last few years, and there certainly, Gibbs, would have been some back in 1991. We mentioned it. Her last boyfriend, Cody, had spent time in jail, and he wasn't happy that he felt as though Carey had slept around on him. While he was incarcerated, Carey allegedly told some friends that she thought he could do something to her, and she expressed some fear of this guy. She told her father that she saw Cody dig a hole in the ground just a week before she went missing.
So she said he dug a hole with his track hoe and would just stand there by it, looking at her and trying to intimidate her, like, this is where you might find yourself. And he had the equipment to do it. I mean, he did. Track hoe, you could dig a pretty big hole, put about anything you want in it fairly quick.
Okay. I think that's a reason to be a little fearful.
Sure.
If somebody's just standing there after having dug a big hole and kind of basically intimating that this is for you.
Yeah.
Or it could be for you.
Could be.
After Carey went missing, her father told his family that some guys came by and threatened him and told him to keep everyone quiet about her disappearance if he knew what was good for him and his grandkids who lived with him. There have also been rumors that Carey's father killed and buried a man in a well after this man came by and threatened him again about staying quiet regarding Carey's disappearance. The well is supposedly across from the house Carey grew up in. This area is known as Waco Bay Estates.
It's a pretty big area.
Said to be over about 100 acres.
Yeah.
There's another theory that involves someone who worked for the company E-Systems Incorporated, who might have had something to do with Carey's disappearance. And apparently Gibbs, working for the E-System company, was almost like working directly for the CIA back in the 90s. Or at least that's what has been alleged. Apparently, some of these people worked in the spy game.
Yeah.
Surveillance, defense contracts, anti-terrorism, and assisted in fighting the drug cartels.
Yeah, when I was looking up this company, I was a little bit nervous pulling up some of the stuff I was pulling up.
And also mad that they had not recruited you?
More so that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after that, I thought, I wonder if someone's going to be coming knocking on my door here in a little bit.
Because it seems like it'd be right up your alley.
Yeah.
But apparently the locals knew all about it because, there were rumors that if this group wanted someone gone, it was going to happen. And it was as simple as that. You would disappear without a trace.
Yeah.
And you would never be seen or heard from again. Just last year in 2019, the Hunt County Sheriff decided to search the 100 acres of the Waco Bay Estates where Carey grew up. They searched with cadaver dogs and other equipment, first on Carey's childhood home, and then expanded the search to the neighbor's lot across the street where this well was that I just mentioned, where it was rumored that Carey's father buried a man. But after the search was completed, the police didn't find anything. And really, they were no further along in the case than they were when they started the search.
That was a pretty big deal that day, seeing all that activity out there.
Oh, I'm sure.
With the different searching units, the equipment that they brought out, things like that. But at the end of the day, like you said, it was a bust.
The Hunt County Sheriff continues to look into Carey's disappearance. But Gibbs, I think, they've come out and said it. The delay in the reporting of Carey being missing, the number of years that went by without really any investigative activity, it's made their job and their efforts very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Carey's family has provided some DNA samples from Carey to investigators and to the National Missing and Unidentified Person System so that maybe they could get a potential hit in the future. Carey's father passed away in 2015, never knowing what happened to his daughter back in 1991. Carey's children have mentioned in the press that it's been extremely hard, not having their mother around and not knowing what happened to her. She just disappeared that night along with her car. Gibbs, as we finish up this disappearance of Carey Parker, I think the one thing that jumps out, and something that I've never really thought about because I don't think we've covered it in any other case, is that you almost realize that you just can't assume that certain things are being done by any one agency or jurisdiction.
Well, I agree. You can't.
Now, I think you and I would both say that our follow-up on a missing loved one, and I think most people would say this as well, would be much more frequent, and we would find out that nothing is happening much sooner than what happened in this case.
Absolutely, we would. And that's before doing and researching everything we ever done. I mean, I think if you go back years ago, I still would have been proactive.
Oh, you mean before really diving head first into the true crime podcast?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I think you and I are much smarter now as it relates to true crime, just based on all the research that we've done. But knowing nothing, I would have been pounding on the door day in and day out.
Yeah.
If I wasn't seeing the results that I thought I should be seeing. And I would obviously do the same today. It's a tough case when you really, look at it, because for such a long period of time, there were no significant search efforts by authorities, no press conferences, no real media right, on her disappearance,
Right.
because why would the media be talking about her? She's not a missing person.
No, you're not going to find anything in the papers back in 1991 about this case because there isn't anything in the paper.
Carey's family has come out, in recent years and expressed to the press what would have happened if the missing person reports had been filed back in 1991. Would they have a different outcome than the one they have today? And I think that's a question that has to eat at you.
Sure.
Because there's no guarantee, but you would say that the chances of investigators solving it, figuring out what happened to her, are much greater if they get to work on it right after she disappeared.
Yeah. Well, the cold case investigators are going to say, we would have loved to have anything back at that time.
Yeah, notes from back in that time.
Yeah.
Of what people said, let's say days after she disappeared.
Right.
Because now they're going to follow up, and if things don't match, okay, let's look into that. Why do they not match? Is it because somebody's trying to hide something? They just don't have any of that. If you have any information about Carey Mae's disappearance, please contact Sergeant Jeff Haynes at 903-453-6809 or by email at jhaynes@huntcounty.net. But Gibbs, the Hunt County Sheriff, has 6 other unsolved cases. We mentioned it right up front. And these are cases that they also desperately need assistance with. We're going to give a quick overview of 2.
Yes.
In May of 1994, 37-year-old Roseanne Jean Payne was last seen leaving her house in Royce City, Texas. Roseanne left in her 1989 light green 4-door Volvo. Roseanne has never been seen, and her Volvo has never been found. At first, her family thought she just left for a few days. But when Roseanne never returned or called, the family filed a missing persons report. The family searched for Roseanne and were told by a few people she was seen at the Nook, a local bar in West Tawakonee, Texas, and at a friend's house in Hawk Cove, Texas. A few years after Roseanne went missing, the detective that was assigned to her case in 1994 saw Roseanne's family and asked if they ever found her.
That's a little alarming to me.
It is, because you would think that the detective would know that information.
Exactly.
So the family called the Royce City authorities and discovered there wasn't an active missing person report on Roseanne. So the family had to file a second missing persons report. This time they filed it with the Hunt County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah.
So again, I said, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. Seems like it's happened a couple of times in Texas, at least.
At least here only a couple years go by.
Yeah.
But again, if they didn't run into that detective, how much more time would have went by? Because they assumed they filed it. So they assumed things were being worked.
And they're waiting to hear, next steps or whatever. On May 1st, 2001, 14-year-old Sarah Elizabeth Kinslow was last seen at Greenville Middle School at 7 a.m. But she didn't go into her classes that day. She planned to meet friends at a local cemetery.
Because that's where kids like to hang out, man. Cemetery.
Not me, but I get maybe some do. Her friend said she never showed up, and she's never been heard from or seen since. Canines were brought in, and they tracked her scent a few blocks from the school, but it ended there. So I think authorities believe that this suggests that Sarah was picked up by a car, and that's why the scent ended abruptly. There was a witness who said they saw Sarah get into an older model light blue Ford truck at 3:30 p.m. They said the truck was driven by a man in his 30s with dark brown hair and a pencil mustache. Later, she was thought to have been seen at a phone booth in Caddo Mills, Texas. 18-year-old Curtis Wayne Bell was arrested a week after Sarah disappeared for sexual assault of a child. And during that investigation, it was found that he had been sexually involved with Sarah. Curtis Bell was one of the friends that she was supposed to meet that day. Sarah had written in her diary that she and Curtis would run away to Mexico so they could get married. A few of her friends who said that they didn't know anything about her disappearance took polygraph tests and they failed.
Didn't do good.
So I don't know. I mean, did those friends really know what happened to Sarah, or were they just extremely nervous when they
took the test?
Yeah, took the polygraph test. It's hard to tell.
And you think, 2001, 19 years later, maybe they would have came forward if they thought they really did know something.
Unless they were involved, or unless, I think, Gibbs, at some point, do people feel like too much time has gone by? If I come forward now, people are just going to say, oh my gosh, you went 19 years without giving us this information. I wonder if that goes through people's heads as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So when you look at all three of these disappearances, obviously difficult for family, friends, and difficult for police. And we talked about it, right? What would have happened if in Carey Parker's case, the missing persons report would have been filed right after she went missing? It doesn't guarantee that her case would have been solved, but it ups the odds astronomically, in my opinion. And then to find out that the family of Roseanne Payne, felt some of that same frustration.
Sure.
Right? They did what they were supposed to do. They went to the authorities. They reported her missing. To find out that no missing person report was filed, it goes back to, what we just talked about. I guess you just can't assume anything.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty good lesson for everything in life. You really shouldn't assume that something is going to happen.
No matter what level of profession,
yeah,
that arena's in. Just, you got to verify, follow up, especially if it's somebody has anything to do with somebody you love, you care about, in this case here, right? You would just want to make sure it was actually filed and that it remains active, because the only reason it wouldn't be active anymore is because they either found the victim,
solved the case,
right? Otherwise, it should always be an active missing person report.
Yeah, because if not, that means something bad has happened as far as them not, getting involved.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's it for the disappearance of Carey Parker. And of course, we talked about a couple of other ones as well. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check that out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
All right, boys, how's it going? This is Scott from Scotland here. Love listening to your podcast. I can't wait for every Monday, Tuesday when your podcast falls in my area. Been listening to it for years now. You are great. I love all the Mike Mossford, Mike Gibby, the whole shebang. You guys are brilliant. Keep up the good work and keep your own time ticking. Love it. P.S. Sent you a donation.
I only got one thing to say. If it's not Scottish, it's crap.
I was trying to remember what Mel Gibson said in Braveheart.
So we actually had, it'll be coming up in a future episode, but we actually had a Patreon named William Wallace.
Did we?
Save it for that.
William Wallace.
But we appreciate the donation. We appreciate the voicemail.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And love the accent.
Hi, guys. My name is Caitlin. I have been listening to your show for a long time, and I love it, but I felt like I really needed to leave a voicemail when I heard that your daughter was recently in the hospital with blood clots in her lungs. When I was 16, I actually had two really big pulmonary embolisms, one in each lung. And it was really, really scary, and it took me a long time to fully recover. And one of the things that I loved doing when I was kind of stuck at home was listening to podcasts. So I really appreciate you guys and love you both so much. But I really wanted to make sure I just sent love and support to you and your family in this time, because I really know how scary that is. But yeah, thank you so much for all you do, and stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Well, I appreciate that very much. There's been so many people that have, called, messaged, emailed. It's blown me away.
Yeah.
I will say I've learned a lot about PEs, pulmonary embolisms,
Sure.
as well as DDTs. All this stuff I just never knew that much about because I didn't have anybody in my family that, had ever really experienced those. So,
But you researched it and
that plus, the doctors filling me in.
Yeah.
They're really good about telling you
what you really need to know.
and boiling it down.
Hi, Fergie and Gibby. This is Bellatrix from Boston. I wanted to give you a suggestion for a case. I'm sure you guys know about Pablo Escobar, Colombian drug lord, famous guy. But I don't know if you guys know about Andres Escobar. He's the guy, he's a Colombian soccer player who ended up accidentally scoring a goal for the wrong side during the 1994 World Cup. And pretty much after that, he knew he was going to die. And yeah, he was killed right afterwards. But there's a connection between him and Pablo Escobar because they say that if Pablo Escobar had been alive, Andres Escobar wouldn't have died. And there's no relation, by the way. It's just because Pablo Escobar was a really big fan of Colombian soccer. So you guys should consider taking on the crime. And that's it. Have a good one. Bye.
That actually would be an interesting one to look into. I'm not familiar with it. I'm not a huge soccer fan, but I do remember seeing something or reading something about the fact that, when Pablo Escobar was in prison in Colombia, if you want to call it prison, he pretty much ran the whole prison.
Yeah.
He had like his own soccer team or something, and they would fly in or be bussed in or whatever. And it was like his team. That's how much money and influence the guy had.
He
basically was running the whole prison. But it's a case to look into for sure.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mike and Gibby, this is Crystal. I am a first-time caller. And probably been listening to you guys since about January when I made it a New Year's resolution to start listening to podcasts. And you guys are the first ones that I found, TCAT. And I have now graduated over to True Crime Unsolved. You guys are great, and I appreciate you. I just wanted to call because on my way home today, I randomly picked one of your Unsolved episodes to listen to, and it was the March 8th, 2020 episode about Brittany Wood. And I'm from Mobile, so I know this case very well. And the timing of me listening to it was really convenient because I just wanted to let you guys know that even now they're still searching for her, and Mobile County Sheriff's offices were actually acting on a tip that they received as of this week, and were digging for her body in an area called Grand Bay. And unfortunately, the search did not yield any results, but they are still working the case, still trying to find closure to bring some type of peace to her parents and her stepmom. And I just wanted to call and give you guys that update. Thank you for your podcast, for all the time you put into it, and stay safe, stay healthy, and keep your own time ticking.
Well, amazing. Thank you for that.
Yeah, appreciate the update. One of the things, I guess one of the problems that I have, Gibbs, is you and I are constantly researching for the future, what's coming up.
Right.
I don't do a great job of looking back on Unsolved and kind of seeing what's going on. So it's awesome to get updates like that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we know there's been some cases solved.
Yes, we do know that.
So that's always good to hear. But I know we keep saying eventually we like to do a look back and recap and things like that. But, I don't know when we will. But
the problem with putting out so many podcasts every week is there's just not a lot of time to stop and do a retrospective or do the research that it would take to, compile what's going on with all the Unsolved. But I still think it would be a great episode. I think people would appreciate it.
Sure.
We just got to find the time because that's a lot of research.
It is.
You're talking about, what are we on? 175. 75. It's a lot of research to go back through and see what's happened. But we appreciate the voicemail. All right, buddy. That's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So from Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.